Welcome back, everyone. Sairam, and we are returning to the Ramakatha Rasavahini, aka Ramayana, as delivered by Satya Sai Baba. And we have arrived at chapter 4b, An Ally Accepted. Rama rose. Both he and Lakshmana moved forward, armed with bow and arrow, with Sugriva by their side. Hanuman and others were permitted to remain in that hill residence itself. Sugriva was given necessary instructions while on the way. At last he was directed to go forward alone and shout a challenge in front of the main gate of the city. Following this command given by Rama, Sugriva stood before Kishkinda city and shouted so fiercely that the walls of the fort shook and the earth quaked in fear. No sooner did that call fall on his ear than Vali rose from his bed, as a cobra does when it is trodden upon, and came out, ready to fight and put Sugriva to flight. He knew it was his brother who had challenged him to combat. At this, Tara, Vali's wife, clasped his feet and reminded him of the words spoken by his own son some days earlier. She said, "Lord, the brothers who have sought his help are no ordinary men. They are endowed with mighty powers. Sugriva, who was in hiding all this time, has come now with new confidence and courage. He has even dared challenge you. He would not venture to do so without looking before and after. He must have received conviction about their capabilities and won the promise of their assistance. The princes, Rama and Lakshmana, have divine powers. It is not propitious that you enter into battle with them." Listening to her pathetic importunities, Vali burst into a jeering laugh. "Cowardly woman," he said. "It is said that Rama is equal-minded. If that is true, he will certainly look upon both of us with an equal eye. Moreover, I have not done him any harm, have I? In spite of this, if Rama kills me, well, I shall believe my birth and years of life have been fulfilled thereby." Tara was happy on the one hand that he had such an outlook. On the other hand, she could not entertain for a moment the idea of separation from her lord. So she pleaded again, "Lord, it is considered a bad omen when a woman objects. Do not rashly accept the challenge." But Vali set aside all her pleadings. When battle calls, no one cares for omens. Either the enemy should die or one's own life should end. So saying, Vali pushed Tara aside and rushed towards the main entrance to the fort, roaring in terror-striking rage. He saw only Sugriva there, so he jumped on him, and both began a heavy fight with their fists, inflicting hammer blows on each. Sugriva could not bear the rain of fierce hits. He felt a desire to flee. Vali, with many a kick and pull, caused such agonizing pain that Sugriva managed to escape, leaving Vali victor. Vali retired into the fort, patting his thighs exultingly. Rama and Lakshmana followed the fleeing Sugriva. When they reached the hill resort, Sugriva fell at the feet of Rama, his heart heavy with the burden of disappointment, despair, pain, and fear. He said, "Lord, I do not understand why you caused this disgrace to me. I proceeded on this venture, buoyed up with a huge pile of hope that you would come to my rescue. All the while I was watching for the moment when your arrow will hit Vali and finish him. But that event never happened. I could not bear the weight of those blows, so I had to take the shameful course of fleeing for sheer life. My brother is a mighty hitter. I could not stand those blows." Rama consoled him and said, "Sugriva, don't grieve. Listen to the reasons. You are so like each other, so indistinguishable one from the other, so much the same in appearance and attainments, that I could not take correct aim at him." Those words had a deep inner meaning, too. They meant that Vali, too, was devoted to his feet. "He, too, is my votary. He has yearned for my grace as much as you have." But Sugriva could not grasp the hidden import of that declaration. He prayed, "Knowing so much, could you not discover who Vali was and who Sugriva was? I cannot believe your words. I do not know the reason why you could not. Perhaps you wanted me to display my ability to the utmost. If that was your intention, I could have taken note of it from the beginning itself. What really happened was, I was so confident that you would bring about his downfall that I took the fight rather easy, in a light-hearted manner." Rama drew the downhearted, dispirited Sugriva to his presence and consoled him profusely. He passed his divine hand over the body of Sugriva so that the pain disappeared in a trice. the wounds and contusions were instantaneously healed. Sugriva was overwhelmed with surprise. He exclaimed, "Rama, your hand can achieve anything. It contains everything. Creation, preservation, destruction, all three are subservient to your will. I have no desire to rule over this kingdom. Compared to the joy your grace can confer, that joy is nothing at all." Rama did not pay heed to his words. He said, "These words of yours are but reflections of passing thoughts. You spoke like this when you had a vision of my power and glory. I do not attach much value to them, for I care more for feelings that rise in the heart. There are many great devotees who forget everything when they experience the sport and supreme might of God, and believe that there is nothing higher than God. But after some time, or when their mental cravings do not bear fruit, they develop doubts, even about what they experienced or saw. These are the veils that hide, the curtains that distort the truth in the minds of those with weak faith. I know how it all happens, and so I do not attach much value to these sentiments. You have to get ready to confront your brother once again." Thus Rama forced Sugriva into the fray. Sugriva had no liking for the fight, but he was certain that this time Rama would keep his promise and kill Vali. He walked boldly on, with confidence in his heart. Rama got some wild flowers and had them strung as a garland, which he put around Sugriva's neck. What Rama meant was, Vali had already told Tara that Rama looked upon all as equal. It was this equal sight that prevented him from killing Vali. Now I have put this garland of flowers round his neck to show that my love towards Sugriva is greater, and so I can with justice deal with Vali differently. Sugriva has a garland extra, indicating that he wears the symbol of divine love. Love needs no reason for its flow. It comes from no selfish urge. Thus encouraged and filled with heroism, Rama and Lakshmana persuaded Sugriva to shout the challenge again at the gate of Vali's fort. They hid themselves behind a tree that was nearby. When Vali rushed out eager for the fight, and when the earth quaked under the weight of his impact, Sugriva was frightened. He prayed to Rama with all his heart to come to his succor soon, and went forward to meet his foe. To justify his own attainments and capacity, Sugriva fought to the best of his ability. When his strength gave way, and the first signs of exhaustion appeared in him, he called out, "Rama!" just once. Rama has as his favorite task the guarding of his devotees. So when he heard the call, he placed an arrow on his bow and shot it straight into the proud heart of Vali. Vali swung round helplessly and slid until he fell flat on the ground. At that moment, Rama came near Vali and granted him the divine vision of himself. Though struck by the fatal shaft, Vali rose and assumed a sitting posture. He was strong and courageous beyond compare. With folded hands, he cast his lingering looks on that cloud-blue complexion, those lotus-petal eyes, and shed streams of tears in his ecstatic exhilaration. He could scarce contain his joy. He exclaimed, "O Rama, being such a divinely auspicious embodiment of beauty, being the very lord of all creation, why had you to perform this questionable act? Had you but told me, and then killed me, I would have been extremely happy to die. Would I have refused to render you the good that Sugriva could? No, no. This has been thus done, not without some justifiable reason. For the Lord would never undertake any task without just reason. Seen from the outside, the task might appear contrary to our idea of divinity, but with the inner view, the fact that it is based on truth would become evident. I know that the deeds of the Lord should not be interpreted from the common worldly point of view. The Lord is above and beyond the gunas, attributes that limit and regulate human conduct. So his deeds can be understood correctly only when viewed from a position unaffected by emotion, passion, or prejudice. Acts done with perfect equanimity can be understood only by perfect equanimity. If you are swayed by characteristics and attributes, you would naturally see only kindred characteristics and attributes, even when they are absent. Vali was endowed with a very clear intellect. So he argued thus and said, "Rama, I know full well your prowess and skill. You can with one arrow destroy not only this Vali, but the entire universe. You can create the universe again. Nevertheless, I desire to learn from you the sin for which you have killed me. Please identify for me the error I was responsible for. You have come upon earth in human form in order to re-establish righteousness, haven't you? What is the meaning and purpose of this action, hiding behind a tree like a common hunter in order to kill me?" Rama graciously sat by the side of the dying Vali and said, "Vali, you know that my deeds are not motivated by selfish ends. Give up your wrong notion that I sought and secured the friendship of Sugriva in order to search the whereabouts of Sita. Why, you yourself said just now that I have assumed this human form for the purpose of reestablishing righteousness on earth. Now tell me, if I simply witnessed the wrong, the unjust and vicious deeds of yours, what would you call it? Service or disservice to the world? Righteous or unrighteous? The brother's wife, the sister, and the daughter-in-law are all three equivalent in status to one's daughter. To cast sinful eyes on them makes one a heinous sinner. No sin affects one when such a sinner is killed. How unjust was it for you to infer that Sugriva closed the entrance of the cave with the evil intention of killing you. You said you would come out at the end of 15 days, at the most, and asked him to wait at the mouth of the cave until then. Yet he waited there, anxiously awaiting you, for 1 full month. Finally, when he was assailed by the smell of blood, he was grieved that his brother was killed by the ogre. He hesitated to enter the cave, for to the ogre who destroyed you, Sugriva would certainly be no match. When he placed the boulder up against the mouth of the cave, his intention was to prevent the ogre from coming out, and to see that he is confined within that cave itself. The citizens pressed on him the rulership, and he had to accede to their wishes. What crime had Sugriva committed when he acted thus? You did not stay to inquire. He never disobeyed your commands and directives, even to the slightest extent, for he loved you and revered you. He adheres strictly to the path of truth. But you treasured in your heart vengeance against him for no reason at all. Your overweening pride drove him into the forest. When you sent him out, you should have allowed his wife to go with him. Instead, you chose her to be your wife, the person whom you should have treated as your own daughter. Do you call this a sin, or don't you? There is no sin more heinous than this. Besides, you occupy the position of the ruler of this region. You have to protect and foster your subjects. How can you punish those who commit crimes when you yourself revel in the same crime? As is the king, so are the subjects, says the proverb. The people will be such as their rulers are. Therefore, what you have done becomes more heinous and more reprehensible, doesn't it? Thus Rama, out of his infinite love, clarified to Vali the crimes and sins he had committed. Vali listened with attention and thought over what he heard. At last he realized his error and said, "Lord, my cleverness has failed to make you pronounce my acts as right. Now hear me. I am not a sinner at all. Had I been a sinner, how could I be floored by an arrow from the Lord's own hands? And how could I pass my last moments looking on the face of divinity and listening to the sweet words of the Lord?" Rama was highly pleased at these words spoken with such high wisdom out of the depths of love and devotion, delight and dedication. Then Rama wished to announce to the world the genuine spirit of renunciation that Vali had at heart. He said, "Vali, I am restoring you to life. I am freeing you from the obligation of old age and senility. Come, have your body back again." He placed his hand on the head of Vali, but even while he was blessing him so, Vali intervened with a prayer. "Ocean of compassion, give ear to my appeal. However many attempts one might make throughout life, at the moment when breath deserts us, death cannot be avoided. At that moment, even the sovereign sages do not get your name on their tongues. Unique good fortune I have secured now here when I pronounce your name, look on your form, touch your feet, and listen to your words. If I miss this chance and let it slip away, who can say how long I may have to wait for these again? Continuing to breathe, what great achievement will I accomplish? No, I do not wish to live any longer. Lord, even the Vedas, the source of all knowledge, speak of you as only not this, not this. Thus they proceed until they declare finally, this, I have now secured in my grasp. Shall I let it slip? Is there in this world a fool who would give up the divine wish-fulfilling tree that he has in his grasp for the sake of a wild weed? This Vali, born out of a mental resolution of Brahma himself, endowed with strength of body and sharpness of intellect, and renowned for these qualities, cannot yield to the temptation of clinging to the body as if it is real and valuable. No, if I yield, I will become the target of infamy. Why elaborate when there is no self-satisfaction? What do other types of satisfaction matter? Lord, as a result of your darshan and your words, I have overcome all sense of duality and distinction. I have acquired the vision of the One, apart from all the rest. The mass of consequence I have earned through my sins has been destroyed. Let the body which is burdened with the consequence be destroyed along with it. Do not allow another body appear to bear the burden. Vali declared his determination to give up his breath and called his son to his presence. He said, "This fellow grew up until now as the lust-born son of this body. He is strong, virtuous, humble, and obedient. Now I wish you would foster him as your love-deserving son. I have placed him in your hands." With these words he placed the hands of his son in the hands of Rama. Rama drew Angada, the son, near him and blessed him with great love. Pleased at the acceptance, Vali shed tears of joy. His eyes were fixed on the divine face before him. His eyes slowly closed in death. Will an elephant worry or take any notice of flowers that fall away from the garland round its neck? With the same unconcern, Vali too allowed his breath to slide away from him. The inhabitants of Pampa town gathered in sad groups as soon as they heard the news of Vali's demise. His wife Tara came to the place, accompanied by her retinue. She fell upon the body and lost consciousness. The agonizing wail of Tara was so poignant that stones melted in sympathy. When she recovered consciousness off and on, she looked on the face of her lord and cried in utter grief. In spite of all the protest I made and the arguments I used to stop you, you rushed forward to this doom. The wife should ever be vigilant about the security and happiness of her lord. There is no one more concerned about the welfare of the husband than the wife. Others, however eminent, will always have some little egoism mixed in the advice they give. Lord, on account of the mischief of destiny, my counsel could not prevail. Lord, how am I to foster and bring up this son? Will those who killed you desist from harming your son? Who will guide us now? How did your mind agree to leave us behind and proceed to the next world? For whose sake must I continue this life? Then Tara turned to Rama and poured out her heart. You sent my dear Lord, my very breath, to the next world. Do you want us, who are left behind, to live at the mercy of strangers? Is this the right thing for a noble person, a person devoted to right conduct, to be proud about? Is it appropriate? If you do not desire our progress, if you have no wish to alleviate our sorrow, then kill me and my son. The arrow that killed the mighty hero will not quail before a weak woman and a stripling lad. Let us join him in his journey. She fell at the feet of Rama and wept in inconsolable anguish. Rama said, Tara, why do you weep so? You are a heroic wife. Do not behave in this manner, for it brings your role into infamy. Be calm, control yourself. The body is a temporary phase. It is contemptible. Vali himself regarded this body as debased. Its fall, its end, might happen any day. It cannot be avoided. It is but an instrument to achieve the supreme goal, and if that end is now kept in view and attained through it, the body is but a lump of coal whose destiny is the fire. Weeping for Vali as this body is foolish, for the body is here. Do you then weep for the Atma that was in this body? The Atma is eternal. It cannot die or decay, diminish or disintegrate. Only those who have not realized the Atma principle suffer from the delusion that the body is themselves. Until then, even the most learned are led into error. Being enamored of the body as if it is you is ignorance. Being aware of the Atma, which you really are, is wisdom. Getting the knowledge of the Atma is as precious a piece of good luck as getting a diamond in the dust. The Atma is the gemstone embedded in this mass of flesh. The body carries urine and feces, bad odors and bad blood. It is pestered by pests and problems. Its decay cannot be arrested. It must die some day. The achievement that one can realize through it is its justification. That is the crown of human life. Your husband has achieved many heroic and honorable victories through his body. While ruling this kingdom, he protected and promoted his servants and faithful followers as if they were his very breath. He destroyed the Rakshasas. He had deep devotion towards God, but he inflicted injury on his brother. Besides that sin, he did not commit any other. His death at my hands was the consequence of that sin. Therefore, believe that it too has been washed away. Now you have no reason to grieve. When Tara heard these words of counsel and consolation, wisdom dawned in her mind, and she was calmed. Rama said that there should be no more delay. He asked Tara to go back and have the funeral rites for Vali performed by Sugriva. He advised Sugriva to bring up Angada with love and care. When the rites were over, he sent Lakshmana into the capital city and had Sugriva installed on the throne. Hanuman and others too entered the city and helped him as friends and followers to carry on the task of government successfully. As soon as he assumed the reins of office, Sugriva called together the elders and leaders of the community. He ordered them to make all proper arrangements to seek and find the whereabouts of Sita. He asked them to initiate all steps necessary for the purpose. Sugriva was not happy that he became the ruler and was honored by that responsibility. He was, on the other hand, sad and morose, because he had been the cause for the killing of his brother. Alas, anger leads one to perpetrate the direst of sins. It breeds hatred and murders love. Shame on me! To what depths have I fallen, since I allowed anger and hatred to enter my heart? My heart is torn in by anguish by the words of adoration Vali addressed to Rama. I never realized, even in my dreams, that Vali had such a deal of devotion and dedication in him. Ah, his wisdom is boundless. His furious anger did not allow that wisdom to express itself. Yes, anger suppresses the divine in one. Lust and anger drag life into disaster. Though much depressed by these thoughts, Sugriva learned the guidelines of government from Lakshmana. He prayed to Rama that he should enter the city and bless him and his subjects. But Rama said that he had to live in the forests only and not enter any town or city. Otherwise, he would be disobeying his father's wish. Sugriva held a conference of leaders and announced that, since the season was late autumn, rains were imminent, and the monkey hordes would be hard put to it to move about in the cold and in the storm, so he suggested that as soon as the autumn passed, they must set about the task of searching for the place where Sita was. He presented this information to Rama and Lakshmana also. Rama realized the truth of these statements, and he acceded to the proposal. The brothers retired to the Rishyamukha hill and took residence there. The rain started soon. It poured as if potfuls were emptied from the sky on every square inch of space. It became a hard task for Lakshmana to procure in time even tubers and fruits for sustenance. They could not come out of the shelter of the hermitage. Sunlight was scarcely to be seen. Rama spent the time in administering valuable counsel to Lakshmana. "Lakshmana," he would say, "when a wicked son is born, the code of morality will be corroded. When a cyclone starts its career, the clouds shudder in fear. The company of bad men is the prelude to the disappearance of wisdom. The company of good men makes wisdom blossom." Thus they spent their days learning and teaching matters concerned with wisdom and its acquisition and preservation. And here we have arrived at the end of Chapter 4b, An Ally Accepted, of Part 2 of the Ramakatha Rasavahini, aka Ramayana, as delivered by Satya Sai Baba. Sai Ram, and we'll see you next time.